the previous videos, we introduced about the tables or specifications. These tables provide informations in various aspects in terms of the allocations of the mark for each COs, the levels of difficulties of the questions, and this gives an idea in terms of the quality of the exam papers. We talk about the importance of ensuring the consistency in terms of the assessment between the two sets of papers as well as over the semesters. We also talk about the steps to develop the test and presenting the relevant informations in the table or specifications. In these videos, we're going to talk about the practical aspects related to the table or specifications. First is about how do we use this table or specifications. Let's say now in this exam paper, we have a total of 5 questions here. These 5 questions are designed to attend to 3 COs as stipulated in the course outline. And then you set the final exam questions. Based on the instructions and also the marking scheme, you will be able to determine the cognitive levels, and their respective marks shall be located with respect to those cognitive levels. With that, you will fill in all the marks for each questions and then start generating for the summations for different cognitive level as well as the summations for each COs, and the total marks shall be equals to 100 marks. You sum everything here, you get this. Sum everything here, you get this, and so on so far. Based on the classifications, Q1 and Q2, question 1, question 2, are meant for the course outcome 1. Now the total marks for both questions here shall be grouped together under the course outcome 1. Same goes to CO2 and also CO3. The summations of this as well as the summations of this, they shall be equal to 100 marks. For a typical engineering program, we are looking at these 3 classifications: the basic, intermediate, and advanced. For non-engineering program, normally they are looking at lower thinking orders and also higher thinking orders. LOT, lower thinking orders, meant for C1 to C3, while higher thinking order go for C4 to C6. We mentioned about the recommended ratio for the diplomas and the bachelor degrees. Let's say now we are dealing with the engineering program. You can actually consider grouping these 2 together and these 2 together and these 2 together in order to show the total marks for different levels in accordance to the classifications here. Let's say now we stick to this. Based on the information provided here, you will see distributions of the marks for different cognitive levels. Low marks are allocated for C1, the highest at C3, and then going back to the lower distributions for C5 and C6. Also, based on the marks allocation here, you will see the distributions of the marks here. 25% CO1, 45% CO2, and 30% for CO3. These are the recommendations. Under the normal circumstances, the following are preferred. First, related to the mark distributions. We will prefer a normal distributions between the basic, intermediate, and advanced. That means if you plot the curve here, it should look something like this. It may also skew more towards here, as long as the intermediate part will carry a larger portions of the marks. This is under the normal circumstances. Now, we talk about the marks allocations. Normally, we will require the advanced, which is C5, C6, to be more than 20 marks. Why is it so? First, the advanced questions are related to C5, C6. Based on the thinking orders, this requires the critical inputs from the students. These students cannot resolve the questions without critical thinkings, without making decisions, without come out with their own solutions. This is the highest levels of thinking orders, and if we set the advanced levels with more than 20 marks, it is to ensure that the students who are qualified to get an A grade out of the course will definitely have to go for C5 and C6 questions. If they cannot answer any of C5 and C6 questions, that means the students is not considered as the A students. Remember, when we need to set the exam questions, we will need to make sure that the students cannot bypass certain thinking orders in order to achieve the purpose. Now we can take this more than 20% as a mechanism to ensure that whoever students are considered A students will have to carry some components and having the ability to answer C5 and C6 questions. Second, for the intermediate, which is C3 and C4, normally we would like it to have the largest portions of all. Let's say now it should be more than 40 marks. As for the basic, normally we will recommend that C1 to C2 questions shouldn't be more than 40 marks. Why is it so? Because when come to the assessment for Bachelor Degree of Engineering program, you know that we are paying emphasis onto higher thinking orders. This will be a part of the requirement for the students to pass the course in order to ensure that they can function well as an engineer, so that they stay competitive in the working industry. You cannot allow the C1 and C2 to be greater than 40 marks. Otherwise, the students will be able to pass the exam papers without even answering the C3, C4, C5, C6 question. This is a mechanism that you can control, avoiding the students to pass by answering only C1 and C2 questions. We are talking about the Bachelor Degree of Engineering program. Next is about the variations of the marks allocations. Normally we like normal distributions. Normally we would like advanced. There will be at least 20 marks and above. As for the basic questions, it shouldn't be more than 40%. And then when it comes to the marks allocations, there are other considerations. For example, the year of the study, the course nature and the function. Are they fundamental courses? Are they specialist courses? Depending on the nature of the courses, some degree of fine-tuning may be allowed on basis of the principles stated here. Let me give you an example. This is a typical example demonstrating that the levels of difficulty may change over the years of the studies. Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, and Year 4. Now we have various courses offered in Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, and Year 4. These are the examples of the specifications as given for different courses. You will need set A and set B to be more or less similar. You will like somewhat of normal distributions along the way. And if possible, you control the C1 and C2 not more than 40 marks. As a moderator, probably you can consider to reject this. The purpose here is to ensure that the students cannot pass the exam papers without trying the questions of C3 and above. Based on the specification here, personally I feel that this is towards the higher end. As a moderator, you may suggest to the course lecturer to reduce the marks here and bring some towards the intermediate level. And then, if possible, you will ensure that at least 20 marks for C5 and C6. Of course, this is also dependent on the years of the studies, as well as the purpose of the course. Let's say now if you are dealing with engineering graphic and engineering surveying, both are more towards skill-based. When it comes to the skill-based, even though there may be exam questions for those courses, it is not necessarily you have to assess towards high levels of C5 and C6. As for the other courses, probably you have to consider that. And then if you see the distributions of the marks, you will see year 1 is actually focusing more towards the basic and intermediate. And then year 2, it is skewing towards the higher levels. Year 3, you will have more portions in the higher levels. And when come to the final year, the higher levels is going towards extreme. There is a reason for that. Normally for year 1 and year 2, most of the courses are fundamentals. Reaching year 3 and year 4, there will be more engineering core courses as well as practical courses. Towards year 3 and year 4, we are preparing our students to be able to function well as an engineer in the working industry. Therefore, it is possible for us to assess the students more towards the standards and challenges faced in the industry. Therefore, there is no point for us to pay more emphasis towards lower orders of thinking. This is about the variations of the marks allocations. Next is about the coherence. All the topics must be covered, except those related to the psychomotors and affectives. Psychomotor will be more appropriately evaluated through practical tests. As for the affective, it will be more appropriately evaluated through observations. And the marks allocations for each CO shall be more or less in line with the student-centered learning. Next is about the consistency. Both Set A and Set B can be with different topics, or you may choose with the similar topics, but they will have the similar table or specifications. In most universities, there is a requirement that we cannot duplicate the papers. In my personal university, since we have supplementary papers, there shall be 0% similarity in terms of the exam questions. The topics can be different. It may also be similar. Now the focus of the assessment shall be different. Nevertheless, the specifications as indicated in the TOS, particularly in terms of the ratio between the basic, intermediate and advanced, should be more or less similar. Let's say now you are having a paper with section A and section B, as commonly done by the lecturer. Section A will require the students to answer all the questions, and then section B, normally they go for C5 and C6. Normally they give options to the students to answer either one of them. If this mechanism is applied, you may have two different questions in this section B, which students can choose either one. That means allow flexibility to the students to choose the questions to answer. Nevertheless, the table of specifications for both questions will have to be totally the same. Why is it so? Because you have to guarantee the quality of the exam paper. Both questions that allow students to choose will have to be towards the same levels of difficulties. It is so that the students cannot bypass the difficult part. It doesn't matter, even the topics can be different, as long as the levels of difficulty are there. Next is about the accuracy. Try not to manipulate the terminologies, as the cognitive level is not defined by the keywords. It is not that the words that you give as the directive verbs defines the level of difficulty. It is also not that you make the questions to be scenario-based that define the cognitive levels, or the length of the questions also provide no significant influence in terms of the cognitive levels. The focus here, it will be the thinking orders that the students need to experience in order to obtain good answers for that particular questions. And you have to make sure that the students cannot bypass those in order to define it to the respective cognitive levels. We mentioned about this in our previous videos. For more details, you may refer to those. You will need to determine the cognitive levels accurately in order to make the table of specification meaningful and functional. And why do you need this? As this is going to bring to you the correct assessment result for the evaluations of the program and the course later. If the table of specifications is not properly done, whichever result is acquired from the assessment, and when come to the evaluations, the evaluation result may not fully reflect the actual situations. And this can easily lead to you wrong decisions in making improvement to the course and the program. And ultimately, you will find yourself wasting your time and effort while imposing very limited contributions in improving the program.